Hi, everybody. Well, we are back again with another episode of Health and Wealth Women's Series, and I am super excited to have a guest with me today who's also a very dear friend and somebody who has just been just a wealth of knowledge and has been helping so many people. So welcome, Victoria. It's nice to have you.
Hello, Jennifer.
And I'm so excited to have you on the show because it is long-term care insurance awareness month. Try to say all that real fast. But I wanted to really bring you on because, nursing homes and care for seniors has really been in the forefront, especially since COVID took place. And I know that, you have been gracious enough to help so many people through this period of time. So I want to tell you a little bit about Victoria because, she's not going to brag on herself. So I am. So Victoria is a certified senior advisor. And in addition to that, she is a certified Alzheimer's disease and dementia care trainer at CarePatrol. And Victoria and her company really help families find assisted living, independent living, memory care, and in-home care. And really what they do is they find the safest places they possibly can in Atlanta and across the United States for seniors, because that is so incredibly important. So I don't mean to drill you with questions, but there's so many great things that I want to ask you. So I'm going to be referring to my notes and asking questions along the way. But thank you so much, Victoria, for coming on and being with us today. But if you can just take a couple of seconds, what drew you into this field and what brought you to wanting to serve seniors?
That's a great question and a good place to start. So I purchased a franchise almost 8 years ago to do this work. CarePatrol is a national company. We have about 150 offices nationwide. We have 3 here in Atlanta. And I'm in the baby boomer generation, right? So when I decided to look at business opportunities, the one that attracted me the most was the industry that service seniors, because and particularly those of us in the baby boomer generation, of which 10,000 of us are turning 65 every day, and we're going to be like the largest segment by 2030, I believe it is, of the population. So it just made sense from a economic standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, I had elderly parents at the time. My mom, who is still alive, just turned 87. And at the time, my stepdad, who has since passed on, they both were facing health challenges. And although they were living independently, they were starting to have some challenges. And so as a family, we were starting to have those conversations about them needing care. And of course, other older relatives, friends whose parents were aging, coming into the aging process and needing support. So it just started to be more top of mind and more of a regular conversation. And so I thought how best to serve not only my family, but the community at large would be to get, just to jump right in, feet first into this role. Yeah.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing that. And I can just tell you that it seems like every week I see a new person that's just putting up on LinkedIn or on Facebook how much you have really helped them. And I do know that, you have been an incredible resource for clients of mine and everything that you're doing in the community. And, I love watching you be involved in people's lives, and because it's not an easy conversation to have. It really is not. And you make it easier to have that conversation and really help families find a place for people that they love. And I think now, especially with what we've seen unfold over the past 19 months, I'm certainly getting a lot more people reaching out to me about long-term care insurance, about having a plan for, should they ever need care. And it's something unfortunate that, we had to have a pandemic kind of rattle some, people to do that. But the fact that, you have been able to be there to help people, thank you so much for that. I want to make sure that I thank you for that, because I love watching, seeing how you've affected so many people's lives. But since we're now talking about COVID, I just wanted to ask you, how has COVID really changed senior living?
COVID has had the single greatest impact on senior living that certainly in the last probably 30, 40 years, or since assisted living was invented in the early 60s. It's touched every facet of our lives. I don't care what industry and what position you're in. It's affected all of us, but it's particularly affected senior living because a lot of the caregivers in not only senior living communities, but private duty home care agencies in general, a lot of the caregivers, they had a tough time. Many of them had to work in communities that had COVID in the building. Some of them may have contracted the disease themselves. It was really rough. There was a long period of time last year when COVID first struck, when the communities literally had to shut down. I mean, they were not allowing any new residents to move in. And if a new resident did move in, they had to be quarantined for 14 days or so in their apartments. So it was a really tough time. I am proud to say, though, that this is a very resilient industry. And the people that work in senior living are incredible people who have a passion and a heart for caring for our aging population. And really and truly, if you don't have a passion and a great big heart for taking care of seniors, you really should be in senior living at all. Really shouldn't be in healthcare, but particularly senior living. So it's coming back. I have many communities that are full and operating off a waiting list. Not all of them, but I have several that are. So I think the confidence is back in the general population. People are feeling better about placing their loved ones in an assisted living community. They've had to put in many precautions and procedures that weren't in place before, but that's to keep everybody safe. And I think that some of those changes are going to be with us, for a long, long time. I was talking to a community last week, and the executive director said, you know what? We're probably going to continue to wear masks when we're interacting with our residents, even if COVID goes away. Because what we found is that wearing masks not only protects our residents during COVID, but during flu season. Last year we didn't have a flu season because we were all masked up or, socially distanced. So there are some lessons learned that I think will be beneficial and be with us for a very long time. But yeah, the industry is doing better. It's not 100% back, but it's on its way back in a big way. And I'm excited because the need is still there. People who needed supportive living before COVID still need supportive living after COVID and during COVID and in the foreseeable future. So it's an industry that's necessary and I think will remain strong.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I know that, we've kept in touch, obviously, and I know it was a struggle. I mean, you had people that were in the middle of placing or finding care, and that all had to change. And then imagine being relocated or going into a facility and now you're quarantined, and it just wasn't a good experience for anyone, so I'm glad to hear that it's, it seems to be opening up some. And to your point about the masks, I have really bad allergies and allergy-induced asthma, and I wear my mask all the time. I'm fully vaccinated, but I wear it whenever we go, and I haven't been sick, knock on wood, because you're just protected, so that's probably something that I will continue to do. Absolutely. But, as we're talking about the care, if you can just kind of break down what the different care options are so that people that are listening understand, really how you can kind of fit in and help find solutions?
That's a great question. So when we talk about care in my little scope of the world, we're really talking what we call supportive living or custodial care. So this is not a medical model. This is more of a social model. This is a model where maybe there is some dementia involved with the senior, and while they may be physically independent because they are starting to have memory loss, they need more watchful oversight. They need someone to prepare their meals. They may need help with having their medications managed, or someone who has a physical ailment. Maybe they had a stroke and they sustained some weakness from the stroke. So maybe they're having some issues with mobility. Maybe they need help in the shower. Maybe they need help with dressing or incontinence care, things of that nature. And then there are other people who just want to be in a community for the socialization aspect, which I think, and I try to tell my clients all the time, I don't think we talk enough about the importance of socialization as we age. Oftentimes, and this is borne out by the science, oftentimes they see that a large number of seniors who live alone do worse, both physically, their physical health, as well as their cognitive health is actually negatively impacted by the isolation, as opposed to those who are inside communities where there's plenty of socialization. They can interact with people that, are from their own age group. There's just, they're eating with their neighbors, they're having meals with their neighbors, they're doing activities, they're going out and enjoying their lives. And they're not worried about, having a roof leak or the lawn being mowed or any of those things that people have to deal with if they're living in their home. So there are so many benefits to senior living, but it's more of a social model. So for instance, a lot of times people will call me and they'll say, well, mom is bedbound, or dad has a feeding tube. Those types of things are what we call skill needs. So that might be a situation where they would need to consider a long-term care facility like a skilled nursing home, as opposed to assisted living, because those kinds of situations will really require 24-hour nurses and perhaps doctors on duty and caring for the patients. That's a totally different model than an assisted living or an independent living models would provide. Those assisted living communities are not there to provide medical care, in other words. So that's one of the big differences.
Do you see more people now due to COVID moving to looking for in-home care more than before?
Absolutely. Of course, last year in the midst of it starting, I saw, requests for in-home care systems go way up. I mean, significantly greater than anything I'd seen before. And even now, a lot of folks are opting to remain in their home, which is understandable, and bring the care in to the home as opposed to moving into an assisted living community. Now, for a lot of folks, that's just not practical, because in-home care is actually more expensive than being in an assisted living community. It's a lot more expensive. So for a lot of folks, that expense is prohibitive. Plus, again, they kind of miss out on that whole socialization piece. So yeah, but in-home care requests have gone up, and that's understandable. And that's a good option for a lot of folks. And we work with a handful of wonderful home care agencies that I have a lot of trust and confidence in. And so when we refer them to our clients, we know they're going to do the job. So yes.
And that's so important, but now that we're talking about the cost, what are the costs and who is actually responsible for paying for those costs?
That's an excellent question. That's the $64,000 question, Jennifer, because so many times people think, well, when I retire and if I start to need help, if I start to have some health challenges, Medicare will cover it. Well, Medicare does not cover supportive living or custodial care. It just does not. So when we're talking assisted living or memory care or independent living or even private duty, those are all private pay scenarios. That means that you're paying out of pocket. If you have long-term care insurance, which is kind of in your wheelhouse, if you have long-term care insurance, those policies can be activated when you start to pay for care. If you are a veteran and you qualify based on when you served in the military, there are some VA benefits that you can access that can help pay for care, or a surviving spouse of a veteran. That's available. But aside from your savings or your retirement or your investments or long-term care or VA benefits, it is all private pay. It's not covered by Medicare or Medicaid for that matter.
Now, is that something that you help when somebody comes to you? Is that something that you help them figure out which is going to be the best that they can do, whether it's private pay or finding out if they have VA benefits available? Do you work with families in that capacity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what we really try to do is be a what I call a one-stop shop. So if someone comes to us, one of the first questions we ask is, are you a veteran? Are you a surviving spouse of a veteran? And then we explain the whole benefit packet that could be available if that is the case. And then I've got partners that are considered VA claims agents. They are really the experts. Then I partner up with them and I refer my clients to them. I don't do the actual application, but I have people that I can recommend to my clients to get that work done.
That's huge, because think about it. You're trying to figure out if you can get into care, what type of care, and then worrying about how to pay for it. I mean, it is, long-term care is an area that I work heavily in, and just trying to figure out, but being able to be there as a resource to help them figure out about their VA benefits. And, that may be just an area that they never even looked to explore and didn't realize that they had that. So that's
exactly
huge. That's huge.
Exactly.
How can I help my aging loved ones prepare for living in a senior community? And what do the communities have to offer?
So, that is such an important question, because the first thing that I say to clients, or one of the biggest things that I see that doesn't typically happen, is families are not having these conversations ahead of time. And so by the time they get to me, it's a crisis. Mom's in the hospital, dad's in a rehab facility, and they're being told that they cannot go home and live independently in a safe way. So no one's had the conversation. No one's talked about, well, what happens when we can no longer live in our own home? But now we know we can't. So what do we do? So I always advise people who aren't there yet, start to have a conversation now. It's never too early to sit down with your aging loved one, your parent, or whatever it is, and start to talk about, what happens, Mom, if you can no longer live in this home that you've lived in for 50 years? Should we start, even looking at some communities now? Because a lot of folks, a lot of our seniors have this perception when you start talking about assisted living, they're thinking nursing home.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, there are some assisted living communities out there that I'm ready to go tomorrow because they are so incredibly nice, and they provide so much support as we age. And so the first thing is to have the conversation. Well, the first thing is to plan. You know, if you're still a working adult, you know, you should be calling Jennifer Perry from Swan Financial to say, you know, how can I start to plan financially for the time when I may need to start paying for care. And so that planning piece, putting a financial plan in place for that time is important. And then if you have aging parents, having a conversation before they're there, it's facing them right now is important. Even like I say, going out and just looking at some communities, just, you know, it's kind of like, you know, when you think you might want to buy a new house. I mean, most folks don't wait until, you know, okay, I'm ready to buy tomorrow. They may start driving out on Sunday afternoons and going to some open houses back in the day when we were doing open houses.
Right.
You know, just to see what's out there, to get a feel for what's out there. Senior living is no different. Certainly folks like me, senior advisors, our services are at no cost to the families. So we're happy to talk with people and, you know, share with them what we think they could possibly be looking at from a cost standpoint, because the cost is really all over the board. I mean, there's so many options out there, and the costs are just all over the place as well. So, you know, if someone wanted to call me, I could really drill down on what they could potentially be looking at, you know, depending on a number of factors. But yeah, I think just starting to have that conversation sooner versus later is important. Absolutely. And of course, everybody should have a POA designated. I forget to mention that, but I don't care if you're 18 years old. Everybody should designate a POA, durable power of attorney, and have that in place, no matter what your age is, for sure.
Absolutely. And one of the things you had said too was that if you're considering that, or you need to go into a community, some of these communities now are working off waiting lists, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you not only have the waiting list, but, you know, if it becomes a crisis, then you're really, you know, it could take even longer. Now, are you still doing virtual tours for people who can't get out and look at the facilities?
Yes, we are. Yes, perfect. We are. We'll do virtual tours, or we'll do in-person tours. So we'll do both. Absolutely.
That's perfect. Because there's still some people that, you know, I have some clients right now that they're just not ready. You know, yes. I think there's this hesitancy with really getting out and interacting with the world again. And I want you to know if you could just take a minute to explain what the difference is with assisted living versus nursing home, because you are exactly right. When somebody says, let's go look at these, they assume the kids are shipping them off to a nursing home where nobody's going to pay attention to them. And I have some clients in some beautiful assisted living places where, like, in the elevators, they've got like all of these activities. And I'm like, wait a minute, I want to come to some of these, like, you
yes.
know, so
sign me up.
You can explain the difference between assisted living and nursing home.
Yes, absolutely. And there is tremendous confusion about this. So I appreciate you asking this question. So as I mentioned before, assisted living is more of a social model, right? It's there to support you if you're a resident. It's not there to provide medical care. A nursing home is there for medical care. If most people interact with a nursing home if they have surgery and then they need to go into a nursing home for short-term rehabilitation, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, okay? So most people know of nursing homes more on the short-term side, but there's also the long-term side in a nursing home. And that's where people go when, frankly, medically, they cannot be supported in an assisted living community their medical needs are too acute, if you will. They're just, as I mentioned, they may need a feeding tube. They may need IV infusions. They may not be able to ambulate or walk or get around in a wheelchair. They may be totally bedbound. Those are the kinds of things that would necessitate someone going into skilled nursing. People going into assisted living typically are able to walk, or they may use a walker, they may be in a wheelchair, but they can still get themselves around. They can feed themselves. Typically, they may just need a little support or a lot of support, is what we call activities of daily living, which are, they need someone to prepare their meals. They need someone to help manage their medications. They may need help with showering or dressing or grooming, things like that. Or they just may want to be in a community for socialization. Those are all things that an assisted living community can support. Certainly within assisted living, you have memory care. And memory care is more of a secure area of the building to support people who are dealing with diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's. So that's a more specialized area of care, but that too can be supported in an assisted living type community, as opposed to skilled nursing.
So when somebody comes to you, because I think you were the ones that had mentioned this to me, that there were facilities where you could, go in and be there and you're completely functioning and fine and you're there for the socialization, but then as your needs develop, then you can move into a different part of the community. Is that something you help people determine too, like what their needs are and maybe the progression of mom or dad's or loved ones, if they do have a disease or if they do have something that they really need care? Do you help them sort out what the best type of facility is?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we do. When a family calls us, we do what we call a care discovery or an assessment. And so what we're trying to determine in that assessment are a couple of things. One, what kinds of care does this person need? Frankly, we start with more the medical history. What's happening? Did the person have a stroke? Did the person have a heart attack? Is the person dealing with diabetes? Is the person having renal failure, arthritis? What's happening with them medically? And then based on that, what kinds of things do they really need help with? What are they really struggling with to do for themselves that they could be better supported in an assisted living community? Then we kind of delve into sort of, how are you going to pay for care? How much, are you able to comfortably spend for care? What are your geographical preferences? People who live in Buckhead want to stay in Buckhead. They don't want to go to Kennesaw, most likely, and vice versa. So we try to honor the best we can the geographical preferences. And so we take all of that information and we make recommendations to the family based on that information. So we're not just giving them what we think is in their best interest. We're having them tell us what they want, and then we try to figure out, we find what they want and present that back to them. And then of course from there we go out with them on tour. We take them out, we tour with them. We really are there to help them navigate through this whole process until they say, you know what, we found the place. This is it. We love this place. This is where we want to move mom or dad. Let's move forward. Let's make it happen. And then of course, we also try to provide those ancillary services or resources that families may need. So for instance, you're coming out of a home that you've lived in for 50 years. You're moving into an assisted living. Obviously, the first thing that you're going to have to think about is downsizing. How am I going to get rid of all this stuff that I've collected? And so we partner with senior real estate agents. We partner with senior move managers. We partner with elder care attorneys for those folks who may still need to put a power of attorney in place or may want to do have a trust established or things like that, or who may want to do Medicare or Medicaid planning for the future. So we, financial planners, we try to make sure we've got a lot of folks that we can also help those families, help provide those resources to those families. So we're not just, okay, we can find you a place to move or to live, and that's it. The rest of it, you got to figure it out for yourself. We try to be, again, that one-stop shop for our clients. Yes.
Well, and I know you personally, but if you haven't picked up yet, Victoria is probably one of the most loving, caring people I have ever met in my entire life. And she literally becomes like this comfort as she's working with people and helping them figure things out on a period of time of their lives, which just may not be very enjoyable to have the conversation. So I personally know that, and I appreciate that. So I know if I have a client that needs you, I know that they are going to be loved on, and even if you can't really help them, you're still there as a resource for them. And that is what I think is missing in a lot of different service industries that are out there right now, is that human interaction. And there's such a need for that, especially after 19 months of not having that, So, and I want to just say that because I love you to pieces if you can't tell. But and so
the feeling is mutual.
The last thing I want to ask you is, when should I consider for mom, dad, aunt, somebody that I just love, when should I consider them moving into, a senior living, or even for myself? I mean, I'm 50 years old, knock on wood, but I may have something that comes up where it changes my life drastically and I need something sooner than I ever thought. There's some people that have gone through that over the past 19 months. When is a good time to start moving in that direction?
Great question. So we CarePatrol, we just published an ebook, and it's called The 21 Signs of to Look For When Deciding, is now the right time for me or my loved one to move into an assisted living community. So for any of your audience who will email me at thearchable@carepatrol.com, I will be happy to send them a link so that they can download that ebook. There are signs that if you are, the perfect example is an adult child of aging parents and that are living alone. There are usually signs that, mom is struggling, bills are not being paid, she's starting to look more disheveled, the house is starting to look unkept, food is, lingering in the refrigerator long past the time it should. Maybe, the lawn is not as manicured as it used to be. She's overly forgetful, unusually forgetful, missing appointments, maybe not taking her meds, forgetting to take them, or taking them, doubling up and taking them. There are lots of signs, and it really is incumbent upon us as adult children to pay attention to those signs, not dismiss those signs, or not let our mom or dad say, "Oh, I'm fine," "Oh, that was nothing," because a lot of times our elders will be in denial about what's going on, and they are fearful of their children saying, "Okay, I've got to do something. We've got to do something. We've got to put you somewhere." Because again, the first thing they think of is they're going to throw me into a nursing home. And so they will oftentimes just, not admit that there's anything going on that the kids should be concerned about. So we really just have to pay close attention. The holidays are coming up. A lot of times, families get together during the holidays and they start to notice little things that are happening that seem out of the ordinary. Don't dismiss those things. I mean, really pay attention to those things. It may not be that mom or dad needs to go into assisted living, or it may mean they do. They should. But if things are starting to look unusual, I just encourage your audience to pay attention and ask questions, seek advice. Maybe talk to their doctor to see, if they've noticed anything or, express those concerns to make sure the doctor is kind of keeping an eye out, as well when they see their mom or dad. But yeah, that's very important to do. Yeah.
But I always look at it like this. I lived at home until I was 17 years old. And I know most people are living at home now, till they're done college.
Mhm.
Our parents kept a roof over our head and fed us and loved us and cared for us for 16 to 25 years of life. The
Mhm.
least we can do is pay attention and have conversations and reach out to you and just be there for them. We're not going to spend 16 to 25 years finding a place for mom or dad or aunt or somebody that we love to be, that they can spend the rest of our life. That's the least we can do, is get in touch with you, to pay attention to the signs and be involved in their life. And there's so many people, like, I'm thankful every day. My dad passed away when I was 58. I mean, he was 58, but my mom is getting up in age. My stepdad's getting up in age. And, I'm going up there. I haven't seen them for a while. I talk to them all the time, but I'm going up there to lay eyes on them just to make sure. I want to see what's changed in their life. And we're going to have those conversations because I love them. And I want to make sure that they know, like, this is a safe topic to talk about. It's not we're putting you someplace.
Yes.
We want to keep you safe. So, and that ebook, I'm going to definitely, put people in contact with you. But as we close right now, I want to thank you again for everything that you are doing for people that are out there. And if there's anybody that's watching this that wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way for them to go about doing that?
Absolutely. So my number is 404-583-1231. 404-583-1231. I will actually type it in the chat. I don't know if your audience will be able to see this or not. And my email address is thearchable@carepatrol.com. And my website is www.metroatlanta.carepatrol.com.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to make sure that all that's available. And then if they want that ebook, I'll have them reach out to you. But I cannot begin to thank you enough for everything that you're doing, the impact you've had on my life and the life of so many people. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I'm telling you, if you have any questions whatsoever, Victoria will take the time to talk with you, be a resource, put you in the right direction, and even give you tips on how to have the conversation. So sending a bunch of love through the screen to you. And thank you so much for joining us today. And
virtual hug.
Virtual hugs. And, we look forward to you getting in contact with Victoria and at least starting the conversation. Like she's saying, the holidays are coming up. If you're laying eyes on anybody that really needs help, please do not hesitate to reach out to her. So thank you again, everybody. And Victoria, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jennifer, for having me. I really appreciated having this conversation.